Psalm 92. I really like the poetic contrast uh, in verses 7 and 8. Verse 7, though the wicked sprout like weeds and evildoers flourish, they will be destroyed forever. I've talked about why I like that. But then in verse 8, but you, O Lord, will be exalted forever. Okay, the wicked, the evil, they'll be destroyed forever. But you, O Lord, will be exalted forever. I just want to be part of this crowd of millions who exalt God forever. And then in verse 9, your enemies, Lord, will surely perish. All evildoers will be scattered. And now we're into another, excuse me, poetic contrast. The enemies of the Lord will surely perish. That's an important concept, and one that's pretty easy for me to lose track of. It's going to sound like an old guy screaming, get off my lawn, but, you know, the media, the only way they can stay afloat is to sell advertising, right? And the only reason people want to advertise is their product is because people are tuning in, right? So media's primary objective is to make money. And the only way they make money, really, is through advertising. And so they're going to do anything they can to keep you watching and coming back and coming back. So the truth and reality get pushed aside for what is scintillating and what will bring you back. And frankly, what brings people back is the horrible. When it looks like evil wins. I mean, I don't bother to watch the news anymore because it's always the same. You know, you got about, I don't know, 15 minutes of reporting on bad stuff. Things that are, I mean, they truly are bad, right? And then every once in a while they'll throw in this human interest story. It's because we're not all about what the bad that's, we're about some of the, well, yeah, whatever. Okay, but don't forget, the enemies of the Lord will surely perish. That's not like, well, you know, one of these days, I just think it's gonna, no. It's a surety. Okay, I don't know when that day will be, but it will happen. All evildoers will be scattered. See that? Now, this is a reference to ancient warfare. When you won against your enemy, the enemy would scatter. And that was the signal. Battle's over. You won. You can chase them down, but you won. And then here's the contrast. But you have made me as strong as a wild ox. Oh, to be likened to a wild ox. But let me tell you, a wild ox is strong. They don't survive in the wild without being strong. I would love, the idea of this is more attractive to me today than it's ever been in my entire life. Because as I age, I get less strong. I get weaker. This was brought home to me yesterday when I had the great joy of playing golf with two good friends and remembering the good old days when I could really poke a drive out there, and watching my best drive go out and drop about 60 yards short of the old days. I would love to be as strong as a wild ox. Well, but you have made me as strong as well. This is not like, but I got back into training and I was lifting weights and I was pulling hard and no. Who made the psalmist as strong as a wild ox? God did. This is not physical strength. This is spiritual, emotional, I even think intellectual strength. You have anointed me with the finest oil. We don't have anything to connect with that in our culture. Have you ever been anointed with oil? Now, some people in some church traditions, they anoint the sick with oil and pray for them, which this is in direct obedience to what James wrote in his letter to the church. If anyone is sick, they should call the elders, who will anoint them with oil and pray for them. It's a great practice, a biblical practice. But that's not the kind of anointing that the psalmist is referring to. This is an act of honor and service toward. In ancient Israel, if you ever get to go to Israel, man, go. Now, maybe wait until it's safer, but go. It's just, man. And when you're there, notice the climate. It's not a desert, but it is kind of subtropical in the sense that, well, that's not even the right word. It's arid, not subtropical, sorry. Arid. The air is dry and the humidity is low. And in that situation, the anointing with the finest oil was done to cool the head and offer, oil for dry skin. But it was more than just this act. Actually, in a home situation, this was an act of hospitality. But when you anoint someone with the finest of oil, that's an act of honor, not just hospitality. Two can be combined, but what's the point? It's not like someone has anointed me or I've been anointed every once. No, this is like, God, you have anointed me with the finest oil. The other application of anointing with the finest oil had to do with how royalty was designated. The king was anointed with the finest oil. David was anointed by God, and his anointing, this literal anointing with oil, designated him as the king of Israel. Okay, verse 11. Wait, back up. God anoints the psalmist. By extension, he could, doesn't it make sense, that he could anoint you and me with the finest of oil? This is I don't see this as a promise, but the principle is there. You and I are honored by the God of the universe. Okay. 11, my eyes have seen the downfall of my enemies. And let's be, realistic here. When I witness the downfall of my enemy, there's a part of me that goes, yes. I don't even have to be vindictive to think that. He goes on, my ears have heard the defeat of my wicked opponents. Now, we're not just talking about a business competitor or somebody on the other team. We're talking about enemies. We're talking about the wicked. Verse 12, another contrast. But the godly will flourish like palm trees and grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon. Oh, this poetic language really keeps coming back to one central thought. The enemies will perish, but God, He makes His people strong. He strengthens His people, and He makes them flourish. Out here in the Las Vegas desert, palm trees are not indigenous, but they've been imported, and boy, do they thrive in our climate. When the first time we lived here, we bought this little midget palm tree. I'm a fan of palm trees. And planted it in our backyard where there was virtually no soil. It was just, the Caliche desert. I mean, there was ground, but not soil. That palm tree just grew and grew and grew and grew. It flourished. How are you doing on that? Are you flourishing? Or are you just surviving? Well, let me just say, if you're just surviving, keep surviving. That's not a sin. It's not a sin to survive. But God's design is for us to flourish. There are things that inhibit flourishing. One would be, well, even for a palm tree. If you plant a palm tree in the wrong place and you don't care for it, it can't flourish. It can't thrive. Second thing is, and planting it in the wrong place and not caring for it would be 1 and 2. And third has to do with, for us as people, not palm trees, we may not be participating with God's design for our flourishing. And in that, I think sometimes, I'm just talking about me now, my idea of what flourishing looks like is a lot of times not what God's idea is. I've got to reshape my sense of my definition of flourish. It's not a sin to misunderstand what flourishing means, but it's unwise. If flourishing is all about financial issues and status, man, that's the wrong prism to look through. But if it's only about my spiritual flourishing, and the physical doesn't even play a part, that's a little bit out of balance too. There's got to be this union of what does flourishing look like. Here's my homework for you. What would flourishing look like to you? All right, does that nail it? No, but I think you need to start there because you only see what you're looking for. Then, second piece, and this is a more difficult piece, what does God say is flourishing? What does God say flourishing looks like? Well, okay. That's enough. I'll see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.